Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining today. I'm Jared Packard. I'm the exhibitions manager here at the Bemis Center, and I have the pleasure of doing a little studio visit with Marcela Torres. I am not wearing a mask right now. We've been good buddies over the last month or two. We've done our testing. I feel I'm pretty safe and responsible about our COVID safety, so.
Yeah, this is just performative. We're actually a pod. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we good? Is everyone, we're not gonna get some hate chats. And I also wanted to introduce our handy dandy cameraman behind the camera.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
flip that screen.
Flip it.
Hey
Hi,
everybody, I'll
Thursday.
take my mask off. Hello.
There you go. We're gonna see that stash. Yeah.
Thanks for the acknowledgement.
Doing the hard, courteous work, noble work of iPad film. To get us started, I wanted to highlight some touchstones in Marcela's career, just to contextualize where this conversation is. Marcela got a BA and a BFA from the University of Utah. Correct me if I stumble. So put your.
No, this is gonna be odd to hear this back to myself.
Also, an MFA in performance from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 2017. Solo and two-person shows in everywhere from Chicago, Illinois at Roots and Culture, Eugene, Oregon at Tropical Contemporary, New York, and Soul Gallery, and an upcoming performance at Recess in Brooklyn, New York. So we'll be talking about that shortly. Group shows: DePaul Art Museum, Rio Grande Gallery in Salt Lake City, Hyde Park Art Center, Flatland Gallery in Houston, Texas. It's a pretty girthy resume. We don't need to go through all of it, but I just want to give you a little context. Also awards, 3 arts, DK's Chicago grants, Louis Art Foundation grant. You're doing pretty good for yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I'm getting hot thinking about it because I never hear these things, and we talked about it earlier. And I was like, yeah, there are things that have occurred to me, and I'm really grateful, but I don't always think about them all together. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight a little bit that Jared and I were really excited to get this opportunity to talk together. Since we actually have a relationship, we've been friends and we went to grad school together. Jared's an incredible artist and curator, has done a lot of really great work here in Omaha and in Chicago. And so I was really excited to join him here in Omaha and have this conversation with him since we've worked together before. He's curated me at times, and we've had conversations about sort of the evolution of the work. And he's seen me in moments of while being here at Bemis, being stressed or excited or being I don't know what's happening. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to chat with you.
Yeah, me too. Let's dig in, shall we?
Let's do it.
I guess the first thing and most obvious thing is that we're here in your live work studio, and maybe we can even get a quick little pan to give people an insight into what a spacious amenity you have here. And it's also hard to ignore that this is a moment of COVID, and so I'm curious, as we dig into both the past and future of your practice, what has the present been for you just in the last 2 months here at Bemis?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to be in a residency, especially with this amount of space. Because in Chicago, I was in a very small apartment and I didn't really have the ability to make. I just had I had enough space to be anxious, but not enough space to create anything. So being in this live work space has been really super cool. But also it's really funny to have such a large space with your studio in it, because at first I was this is so comfortable and having so much fun. And then after the first week, and I began to think about making work, I'd have trouble sleeping because I was in my studio. And so I'd be okay, I left that thing undone. And it's literally a few feet away from me. Now I have to think about how to solve this problem, how to work through the project at all times. And so since there's so much different kinds of space here at Bemis, I've been able to work in the ceramics studio, and in some ways I felt I could leave work rather than it be here. But it was really nice to just have a place where I could finally move, because that was a large part of my practice, regardless if it's in service of a project, just being able to move and be, and I think I'm also kind of an organizer in my work. I like to organize things and see them, and eventually they might show up. But it's more about being like, oh, right, there y'all are.
So it's usually about being a mover, and maybe that's a good place to kind of jump back in time a little bit about, and kind of the genesis of our friendship was really when you were working a lot around movement, and particularly like martial arts. And I'm curious if you could maybe, set the stage for where that part of your practice.
Yeah, I think I was really looking for a language, like a physical language that could speak towards violence. And violence is much more complicated than just being like, someone hit me, like it comes from certain places. Where does anger come from? And what is the dynamicism of violence? And I think that sometimes violence comes from places that are supposed to be soft, like sometimes from care or from family or people that are supposed to be taking care of us. And so I wanted to find a language that could personify sort of like the larger phenomenon of violence. And so I turned to martial arts. And at first it was maybe one-to-one, it was very direct, like violence, martial arts. And this weird thing happened where it's not one-to-one. It's about it's about respect. It's about de-escalation. It's about caring for your team. It's about thinking through the situation as to not destroy somebody, but to beat them. And it's so much internal work. Like your own mind, you have to just be continuing thinking like, everything's fine. This person's trying to hit me, but I'm supposed to act like it's fine, And so for me at the time when I started the martial arts work, it was more about finding a place of control for myself. Like finding a place to put like my upset or even moments of masochism forward and finding a way to physically express them in a way that wasn't like getting to fights in the street or like feeling self-hate or things of that sort. To actually activate and create a tangible language that could be used in performance, but also could be used to like calm my own anxieties.
That's interesting. I'm like thinking about, I think a lot of people are familiar with, studio-based practices, working as we're in right now, right? Like a painting or sculpture practice. And like, I think what's interesting about your martial artwork is the way that it blurred kind of the studio and lived experience. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit for people about the rigor of pursuing that.
Yeah, I actually love this question. I did the math recently because I've been training for about the last 5 years. And there are moments where I was obsessed and then moments when I was training to fight. And I've done the math and it's about like 800 to 1,000 hours that I've spent training.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that silly?
It's not silly, that's impressive. That's really good.
But it's this thing where like, I think some people like painting, right? You're spending all this time being there and there are all these like problems to solve. Each work presents a new exploration, a new problem, a new like direction into the question. And then for training, I think for me it's like when I'm training, it's very dynamic. You're spending a few hours a day to just like hit something and go really fast, and your body has to be technically perfect. And you have to point your toes, and you have to point your elbow, and you have to really go into it. And that's the space in which I don't feel anxiety or I don't feel upset because my body and my mind are activating together. And so I think sometimes it's hard for me to like actually have real studio time, or not real, but like to have studio time that seems more traditional, because I really think that like this problem solving thing occurs as a physical and mental thing for me that like is about pushing myself and challenging myself in a way that's super dynamic, thinking like punching something and like asking your body to do more than more than you think it can. And that to me is how I identify my practice or how I see my studio time.
I want to take a second to just invite anyone who's watching right now to Google Marcela Torres' website, just because as we're talking about like this a very physical performative practice, I think it is helpful to have some visual cues as to what the environment might look like, or some of the movements that you're actually talking about. As much as I love your demonstration here onto the table, but
Yeah.
so if you Google Marcela Torres artist, it should come up. Yeah.
Marcela Torres.
There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I've always been interested in dance, but I have always found that like the training of martial arts has been more sort of my style, because there's like a back and forth of like you're responding to something, and so there's a certain level of risk that occurs, and you're not only responding by striking, you're responding by blocking or moving, and there's like a move for every move. And I really like what that means for like a back and forth with somebody. It's one thing to sort of dance with somebody and know like this step, this step, this step. But what if the person's trying to hurt you, you know, or trying to hold you or trying to teach you something? I really like that sort of connection with people that seems consensual but like also intensified.
And that to me speaks of, goes back to what you're talking about, this boundary between care and violence. And having been to some of your performances before, there are moments that are really intense and feel threatening even as a viewer, either whether we're witnessing threat upon you or just like this overstimulation. And I'm curious how you navigate both for yourself, but then also for your audience, kind of like this putting sensorial triggers upon yourself and your audience versus making sure that people feel cared for and you feel safe.
Yeah, that feels like a big question because I think it's super important for the participants to be participants, be active and like really in the work. Because there's this thing where like breaking a fourth wall or whatever, right? There's a thing where as audience in theater often we think we're watching. We're watching the individual and they're the one that's acting or doing the thing. But like when we're asked to witness in a different way, the way in real life, when we're walking down the street and something terrible happens to someone around you, you're then a witness in a different way and you're participating and your energy goes towards them. And so then like in my interest is like pushing myself. I'm also asking people to hold me and be with me in the moment. And I think that creates like a memory. That creates like a space of engagement and knowledge building that is a memory inside and embedded in somebody. And even though it was something that was created as an artwork, I hope that it creates that same space where like there were moments where I've been on the street and something crazy has happened and I've been like, maybe I didn't act right, maybe I could have helped more, maybe I should have run, maybe I should, and from those moments and those experiences, we think about our humanity and how we engage with other people and like how we will engage ongoingly. And so that's what the work sort of asks participants to do through like my own intensity.
Yeah, I think that's a really poetic idea that like our bodies hold knowledge. And I think I like to think of the body as like an archive. Sometimes that's a useful tool, I guess. In terms of like, it having its own desires and needs and, memories and traumas that are sometimes out of sync with like our kind of psychological mental state. And it makes me wonder about kind of the cathartic element of your work, both, maybe we could just start with it as your own body and like how activating kind of that link between body and you're talking about like developing respect and self-care and those kinds of things, and how are you learning about your own body through that?
Yeah. So me and my friend Dee Rosen, hi. We've been talking a lot about this idea of violence, care, and transcendence, and how they sort of act as like some kind of triangle. And then for me, there is a catharsis when it comes to like accomplishing something. It might be through like, okay, wait, let me go back.
Yeah, let's back it up.
Yeah, let's back it up. Okay, so in the martial arts work, I always felt like I was being an imposter because I was using it as artwork. And I was like, I have to go as far as I possibly can to prove that I'm real, that I'm really doing this. And so I was like, I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna keep fighting. And so I fought twice and it became this obsession. It felt like making a show, but it's not connected to art in some ways. It just like was an accomplishment I needed to prove. And I pushed it really super far. I was training like 3 hours a day. I was like really fucking like in it. And I didn't win either time. The last time was really super intense.
Because you didn't win?
Yeah, and because like I couldn't turn off the trauma button in my head. If someone's hitting me and I'm in a small cage and everyone's screaming around me, I'm like, she's gonna kill me. She's probably gonna kill me. And I couldn't turn that off. And I think like within sports, you're supposed to be able to be calm and cool and you're like, I can do this, I can figure out the solution. But like, I just couldn't move past that.
Mhm.
And so like I lost and I was embarrassed and my coach and everything were like, oh, it's fine. And they're really loving. And they
Mhm.
like through all that violence, there's so much care. They like are these grown ass dudes, you know? And I saw my partner and I couldn't stop crying. And I was like, fuck, I shouldn't have like told him to come right now. Now I'm crying and in front of my coach. And my coach like tried to like care for me. And it was after that that I realized like something had happened, that there was a catharsis, there was a transcendence where I was like, I accomplished my goals. I might not won, but I don't feel like an imposter. I really put myself as far as I possibly could, like really identify this like intense space of like stress and fear and overwhelmment and generational trauma. Like I put myself there and I did it consensually and I don't feel bad about it.
Mhm.
I feel like I was able to unlock something I wasn't in the past. And ever since then, that was only in March, I have felt really different. I felt really grown up.
Grown now.
I'm grown. Where like, where I've accomplished a lot of things and I can go back and I can do it again and I can try to win and I can understand more. But there's also something where, like I don't have to prove myself the same way. I don't have an imposter syndrome. I am a fighter. I am an artist. I am all these things combined. And so like it was through that through that reaching, through that thing that like something opened. It was super uncomfortable, you know? It was like really uncomfortable. I didn't sleep at night. I just felt ashamed. I felt so much shame. And then I woke up in the morning and I was like so upset, but I had been cared for. And I was like, oh, I'm not really that bruised. Turns out my body's fine, you know? And so my body cared for me, my friends and partner and family cared for me, my team cared for me. And then I was like, okay, cool, the only person that's like being an asshole to me is me, so like, let's get over this.
So this is like this shift, this transcendence that you're identifying from the second fight. I'm wondering if this is maybe a good segue into our more recent work, because there's a pretty dramatic pivot in terms of everything materially, aesthetically, and kind of like even an emotional tenor that's quite different. And so let's talk about that. Is there anything in the room that you want to point to or kind of use as an entry point into the new stuff?
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly. Like I can talk about it, but I'm not sure how to make the entry point.
Let's just move over here, just to have a physical shift to mark our conceptual shift. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So here we have some ceramics in the foreground.
Yeah.
In this, acrylic, is it acrylic?
This is
plastic. Vinyl little ink casing.
Yeah.
Maybe can you talk about just first like the ceramics and how that's.
We have to go back to go forward.
Oh, I keep on trying to plow forward.
I know.
You are.
No,
Right, you're right.
Well, you guys are not right. I'm like gonna be like, stop, stop. Yeah, actually, thank you so much for that transition because you're spot on. Because like after that, I was like, thank God I'm an artist, because I can do something else.
Yeah.
And I have a show upcoming at Recess, and I really
Congratulations.
thank you.
It's great.
And it's very soon. And I had suggested continuing this work, this like martial arts work. And then COVID happened. And you know, the priority to make amongst the racial upheaval and the political craziness and like the death of so many loved ones and a true revolution in how things have been. Some things seem normal or the same, but they aren't, because we aren't the same. The way we interact with each other is insane. The fact that we're being able to do this is only through a lot of testing, and a lot of like time together.
And even then there's like this caution and a prefacing to allow it, to permit it.
Yeah, because there's like the physical thing about illness, but then there's also this thing inside where we don't feel safe anymore. So it just didn't feel like plausible to continue to make that work, and I'm happy about that. And so I began to be more and more interested in like sort of this idea of how do we grieve as a community? a lot of us have ways in which we grieve, but they can be sort of religious or group specific or, you know, but I want to find other ways to think about like terms of ways of healing or grieving. And so I became really interested in like Aztec Buddhismo, like healing practices. So I was reading, and then there's this tiny little passage in the book that was about this idea of Flower Mountain, and I was like, lit, what's that?
And what is it, Marcela? Where's Flower Mountain?
I may look back at this and all the crazy faces I made, but not like it. Okay, let me be. So Flower Mountain is this indigenous practice that like many indigenous like mesoamerican groups, and then also some like native US groups practice. And it's a place where, like, if we have two spirits inside of us, we have a wild one that is connected to caves and forests. When we pass away, that one goes away, except our physical body. But then we have an inner deep soul, and that one is the one that goes on living. And instead of it being like a complete heaven space, there's definitely a lot of interaction amongst other ideas or other, it's sort of a universal idea, that this heaven space is a solar paradise, and there's like a path that leads up to it, and it's like a location in which beautiful scents and music and the sun is radiating on us, and the wind god is allowing us to be there, and all we need to eat is beautiful flower scents. And so then like it is, and it's raining flowers and gems. And so I was just thinking like, in this space in which death seems so present and ugly, they're super ugly because, you know, when people pass away, their bodies have been in so much pain. That it was nice to think about like a place that's beautiful. Like going away from the other work that's like intense,
Right.
to thinking about like what can be beauty and what is the value of beauty when it comes within the space of grieving. And so I really like taken up the want to like recreate this space in sort of a contemporary way. So using what really ongoing, universal, incredible indigenous practices, and then like being like, yeah, this is still something that's really valuable and important for us to like actually think about and would actually assist us in this moment. So yeah, so we have these objects here. A lot of them are made out of ceramic, and they reference Aztec pottery and Aztec drawings. And the background, the photos are just of me, but those for a different project. I couldn't take them out. It's, you know, it's still in the process. And so then they're meant to be sort of like incense holders or like vessels for smoke. And this idea of smoke continues to be like super present. This idea of what is Flower Mountain, how do we engage with Flower Mountain, and how does it become a liminal space where we can be with our deceased loved ones or see them. So
it's kind of, is it a bridge space?
it's a bridge space. Like it is a place where we can like be with one another and like transcend and be in the same locale. Yeah. So yeah, smoke becomes a huge part of it. And then I'm working on paintings, which is super wild, just because, again, I'm like letting myself do the things that I want. And so this kind of goes back to like some of the other things I've been interested in, like smoking as well. And so, yeah, I think that it'd be fun if we lit some of these.
Yeah, let's do it. What are we lighting? What scent?
Well, we are going to light some charcoal blocks.
Okay.
And then we are going to, oh, this is so funny because we're going to see my paintings and I'm going to be like, oh no. Okay, so we're going to light some charcoal blocks, and then we're going to put copal on them, and it's going to smoke out. And this box or this like curtain, I'm still experimenting with, but it's meant to sort of slow the flow of it. So you'll notice it'll stay here for a long time, and you'll be like, okay, cool, this isn't too overwhelming, and then it's going to get crazy. It's going to fill the whole space.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
Can I help you? What are we doing?
I don't know. Okay.
Ooh.
Nick, what would be how about over here? Because then you don't have to see my dirty space.
So maybe as you're lighting, can you say a little bit about what the scent, I know you haven't put the copal on it yet, but what is important about that scent or that material?
Well, all the materials we're using are considered like sort of ritually important and potent. And so copal is often used in like sacred services. And it's a resin, and it just has this really super intense smell. And I think like when we think about different cultures and their scent notes, copal I would say is like really personify sort of like mesoamerican scents and aromas. And also like this, it's interesting because like yeah, it's like these little rocks. I don't know if you can see that.
Let's do it up close.
Yeah.
These like little tiny rocks, and then they like
Just a little lot.
slowly
It looks
bubble
like
up.
amber, like a clear amber or something, if you can tell.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any scent, just in its raw form, I think, interestingly.
And then like we will have tobacco and cedar and a few other notes. And
So can you, this drive to connect to materials tied to both ritual, but then also to Mesoamerica and the Latin diaspora, can you share a little bit about that?
yeah, I think like for me, I'm still trying to like identify exactly how. I guess within diaspora, often people like say you aren't Mexican this way, or you aren't like U.S. American this way, and then you have to continue to be like, no, but I am, I am. And so it's like sort of this identification of exactly how you fit in. And so like indigeneity has been continually like something that I question and I'm interested in. It's been something that like from a very young age, my father was always sort of like pointing us back and like bringing us back to like that generation point. And so this has just been like really fascinating for me to like doing more and more in research and feel connected to something that isn't like Catholicism or isn't something that is connected to colonizers, but is further back in my lineage, and that feels more genuine to me. That feels like more like something that I can like identify with.
Can you share a little bit about kind of your journey of, because full disclosure, I'm kind of like teasing for particular stories that I think are informative and helpful. In terms of like as a young Marcela, like can you share a little bit about like some of the
What do you want to hear?
I want to hear about heavy metal. I want to learn about like what that journey for discovery of what your Mexican ancestry meant for you in the context of America. What were those frictions, and where did you find resonance, and where were you rebuffed?
Okay, great. So my family is LDS Mormon, and so they like most of my family lives in California and Utah, and that has been their religious footprint, right? And so this is very much not like the Catholic Church. And so like when I meet other Mexicans, they're talking about padrinos or like Dia de los Muertos, there's certain things that are connected to Catholicism. And so because we're not Catholic, people be like, what's wrong with you? And I'd be like, yeah, I don't know. And so it felt like being almost born into like a different cult. And so I have felt super confused about it because many generations of like Latinx brown people, you know, deal with being brown in the US in different ways, either by not teaching their kids Spanish or trying to erase that. And for me, it wasn't an erasure, but we were always like very different than other people because I think my parents were feminists, whether they understood that word. They were Mormon, and they also, I don't know, they were just like a little bit more liberal without realizing it. And so I think that spoke to us in a really strange way that I think that they couldn't have possibly prepared for, which is like my elder sister got really into like industrial music. So we were like listening to like Du Hast, Rammstein's Du Hast on like loop. and like Nine Inch Nails
Yeah.
and Orgy and like all this shit. And so we were like, yeah, this is it, you know?
Yeah.
And so then there was this idea where like, I remember listening to a lot of new metal bands, and it felt like these white guys, like we're in Omaha, right? So Slipknot and
Slipknot country,
Korn,
for sure.
yeah, like all these guys were talking about a certain kind of otherness, and I was like, oh, whoa, okay, this is about me. It's not. Plot twist. But I kind of felt like it was.
Yeah.
And so then it's been really fascinating to like grow into that and be like part of my Latin American history or journey is attached to indigeneity, or is attached to Aztec autonomy, is attached to speaking Spanish, is attached to certain flavors and scents. But it's also about misidentification, like being like, or disidentification, as Esteban Munoz would say, right? So like queering sort of a spectrum of like, there's this countercultural group, and you're like, like you're in it, but you're not in it, and you're kind of like fucking it up, and you're like doing the opposite and like re-identifying it as far as like what you want. And so like you know how Spotify does that end of the year playlist and it shows you who you listen to the most? I was like, oh no, it's like Bad Bunny, Nine Inch Nails, and Rammstein, and I was like, okay, well, here we go. It's like Latin pop, reggaeton, and then like a bunch of like strange industrial.
I just want to take a second to let the people on the other side of the screen know, like, just cue you into like the sensorial experience that we're having right now, where it's like almost like a mentholated, like a cleaning of my nostrils. I don't know. There's something I would say purifying about it. Maybe I don't know if that resonates with your experience, Marcela.
I think so. It's quite powerful. It's not like sage. It's not like patchouli. It's like a very different kind of earthy.
Yeah.
I would say it's bright. I would say it's more close to like a pine.
Okay. I see that.
Than like something else.
So I want to give y'all a chance to ask some questions. So start ruminating. But I also want to delve a little bit into this performance that's coming up more imminently, which I know is scary. I know we're still figuring out what it's going to look like, what it's going to work. But I'm curious what's like. Think through it. What are we going to think about?
Great. So the next body of work was supposed to be about sort of tobacco as another language to talk about diaspora. And so tobacco is a master plant that like is super powerful and has been used in ritual service or prenatal care and all these different things before being industrialized. And then since being industrialized, there's all these little spots and locations that really become powerful about it, which is lounges, factories, people rolling, and fields. And so, but cigars or tobacco specifically are raised in lots of different places. So after like the embargo and everything that happened in Cuba, people have to move to different islands, and there's even tobacco grown in Connecticut and Mexico. And so, yeah, I thought it was a really great way to talk about Latinidad and specifically diaspora. And so, and the strangeness of that. As sort of like an idea to like identify or to unify us, because within like brownness, yeah, we don't like this person, we don't like that person, like people aren't unified, and this is kind of why these terrible things happen. Like maybe if we were more unified, we could stop like Central and South Americans from their kids being locked up in cages, you know, if we like were like, if the white Mexicans were like, hey, excuse me, you know, like if we all unified as like a combined force and we're empowered to do that. So this section that I'm doing, yeah, it's uncomfortable and it's strange because I've been like putting it back, and COVID definitely set all my plans back. And so now I really have to like go forward in doing it. And this one is like a really strange section because it's like the Mexican cigar. And so it's like very much like whatever I want to do, which is turning out to be real weird. And it's, yeah, it's like the new metal industrial section. So it's the Te Amo cigar. It's a Robusto. And the music is being made by LS Spacer from Chicago. Hi. I'm really excited for them to make the music, and so I've been sort of like thinking through again, like, what is the participatory parts of the audience? What parts are Mexican and what parts are these strange sort of gothy industrial moments? And this is the hardest part. How do I smoke a cigar and dance at the same time? Because I keep getting sick.
Yeah, that'll tear up your lungs.
Yeah, it makes me nauseous.
Is that part of the performance? Is that the content you're trying to deliver?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's turn the lights on and show all of the cigars that you've smoked as we're talking about making you nauseous.
Okay.
Because I think it's a nice, it's kind of similar to like this blurring of life and art that we were talking about in regards to your Muay Thai practice.
You said that right.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, Muay Thai.
Muay Thai. But I think there's something similar here where like this was a hobby and a passion, and it has also kind of fueled your art practice.
Yeah, I think that's what happens. I think I get like obsessed with things. I'm like, this is a perfect vehicle for art. And so then I think that, yeah, the things that I become sort of obsessed with or spend all my time and money and begin to be like, I want to know more. So I want to research them as hard as I research sort of art-based things. And then they become the thing. And so, yeah, I've been collecting. Well, I've been smoking cigars for a while now. And I began to get into collecting them. And I don't know. I love to have stuff, chucherías, you know, like just random shit. And so like this to me is like very much like an archive of my memory. And like I put these out and I don't know what to do with them. I don't know what they're gonna be yet, but I really just enjoy having them. They are my archive. And you can tell which ones are my favorites by which ones have the most. So
there's a lot of these bad boys.
Yeah.
Look at all those.
My father's. And then these are the green ones. You want to pick them up?
Yeah, these ones?
No.
Oh.
These ones? Yeah, these Norteños. These are really one of my favorites. They're nice little box press.
Yeah.
They're nice and dark. They have a great earthy texture and they're really velvety. So like to the touch, they're like pressed in these little boxes, like in a box shape. And they just are like a delicious smoke. And so I got really obsessed with that for a long while. And so are we at 45?
We're doing great. I want to finish your thought.
Yeah, so basically all of these are, a lot of these places or these houses or these cigar brands were originally Cuban. And then when they were like basically forced out of Cuba, they like relocated to a lot of different islands or locations. So there might be two different of the brands, one that's Cuban and one that's like Dominican. And so what we are smoking, what we can get here are largely not the Cubans. So all of these, even if they have a Cuban line, we're smoking mostly the otherwise. And so it's really cool because a lot of these are like families who have been in the cigar business for a really long time. And so they're master blenders. And so they just had to move somewhere else and took their seed with them and like replanted.
I'm gonna make a comment and then I'm gonna turn to you guys to start tippity-tapping in your questions now. But I don't wanna like push a narrative that maybe isn't there, but I'm thinking about kind of this self-care and something about like your earlier practice. It had a real like sadistic, masochistic. You were talking about the trauma of like being in that fight, right? And there seems to be, there seems to be a connection there to that pain, right? And this shift of like what's happening here, listening to you talk about like the nuance, the subtleties, and like the connection to not only a material, but like something that's ingested and has a long history. Like there seems to be a very different kind of caretaking of both yourself, but then also these traditions. And I just kind of wanted to muse a little bit on that thought before we pass up to you. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that observation or not.
Yeah, I think that to smoke them get you long, it's like 45 minutes. And so you're literally breathing in and you're breathing in a piece of land and you have to ruminate about that and really think through like what is that process of like smoking it in. And it's a process that has been in your mind whether you recognize it or not for way long. And so, yeah, I have some here. These are the demos. This is,
We're not gonna smoke those indoors because that's wrong, right?
yeah.
All right, we're gonna look at some questions. D. Rosen. Marcela, how do you see the element of smoke within your incense or smoke bomb making and within your tobacco research as being similar or different? One is made for more individual ingestion through the mouth, and another is designed for more collective inhalation through nose, mouth, skin.
Yeah, I think that's, oh, there's more.
There's more. Thanks, D. Rosen. I'm just curious to hear more about how you're thinking about the interrelation between works that use smoke as an element.
Yeah, I love that. Hi, Dee. Dee and I are doing a workshop coming, so we've been talking a lot. So like we were talking about this idea of transcendence, and I think that like there are multiple things, multiple ways of that happening. It can be an internal thing, or you can like have presence with yourself to transcend forward, or it can be like a collective thing, right? And so then the sensors that we lit here is more of a collective thing, where we're burning things that can be inhaled as a collective group to then create maybe like a community transcendence, where we are like then transcended to like a spiritual space or a medicinal place or like a pact or something of that sort. Well, I think that like, and tobacco can be used in either, but like I don't think we can smoke in copal. That'll be like really hard for our lungs. But like tobacco, yeah, I think it's so interesting to think about how we find presence or transcendence, because like right now we're doing it like through our noses and through like an aroma. And for tobacco, it's similar, but we're doing it with our mouth, and it's an oral fixation, and that's how we're finding certain types of grounding. So like we're grounding ourselves with like it touching our lips and it being smoked in. And I will say the smoke's really different, because like this is like a spreading really intense smoke that is white. And the tobacco smoke is really interesting because it changes once it leaves your mouth. So it'll be like blue, and then when it leaves your mouth, it becomes gray. And so then there's like a process in which it's changing as you being the middleman.
I guess also maybe to riff on this question, aside from like the collective versus individual, the actual material of smoke, I've also heard you talk a little bit about like the community of smokers, of like cigar smokers, and that being like a catalyst for a collective experience, which I think is interesting as well.
Yeah, totally, because yeah, tobacco can also be very collective, but yeah, and like in lounges, that's the thing that's interesting. I really like lounges and going to places where lots of people are smoking, but then that transcendence happens really quickly, which means I begin to get sick really quickly because there's like a lot of smoke going on. And so, yeah, both of them can be collective, but I do view them a little differently. Do you have another question?
Yes, we do. Marcela, can you speak to your ceramic practice in relationship to the work you made at Bemis?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, I know, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think ceramics is really physical. And there are a lot of rules. And I think those are two things that I really enjoy. So if I'm working with my body in a different way, I'm now like addressing a clay body. And rather than it being about like me working out and like that, instead I'm like trying to like help to form this physical body. And so I really struggle sometimes with the idea of myself as a ceramicist, because I think that like I do come about it in a really different ideology, because like a lot of them are kind of fucked up, don't look inside. But it's more about like the engagement of one another. And the ceramics are also really research based. So a lot of them are actually objects that are being they're recreations in a lot of ways. And so that's been a really interesting way to sort of like recreate historical vessels, but then think about them combined with like drawings. So then if we look at these vessels here, this is like, these two are very well-known like Mesoamerican vessel shapes, but then they have like these sort of smoke symbols on top of them that are from a drawing on a vessel. They're supposed to signify like the scent that brings us to Flower Mountain.
And so, yeah, they're all being sort of meshed together and conformed. And so then it's been really fun to like, to like do this physical practice with a certain level of research as well. So yeah, it's been a strange journey that I'm really enjoying.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think we have one more over here. What's up? We're gonna have to talk about Black Sabbath. Oh, that's from Nicholas.
Oh my goodness. All right, Nicholas, let's talk about it.
Yes, I love the softness and vulnerability of these vessels, especially turning a corner from digesting violence and connectivity. Can you share your thoughts on the strengths of softness and queerness, especially considering you taught me how to throw a punch?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Yeah, I think that like in the studio visit I had with the residents a couple of weeks ago, there was this real idea about how hard it is to be soft, to be vulnerable. And for me, it's much, I think that like all of us as artists, we try to like have our brand or the way that we come up, show up in a way that we're comfortable with. And maybe that's like cool or sexy or attractive or smart. And I definitely wanted to seem strong, like my whole career. I just want to seem strong and I want to seem like a badass and like I can kick your ass. But it's also because I'm very soft. and
Compensating.
I'm compensating a little bit to try to like figure out how to then allow for someone to hold me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoy sort of like my performance practice because it's like the performances are really intense, but I'm we're like really asking people to hold me. I'm like, will you please turn off the lights at this time? Will you please play the music this way? And it's to be like held and to be curated. And so I think, there's like a lot of vulnerability in it. And I think that's what I was saying about like after the fight, like I wanted to be soft. I was ready to be soft. I was ready to engage with people that way and to be seen as being soft because I didn't have this thing to prove anymore. And I think within like also a queer lens, like within non-binariness, there's still this thing like if you don't show up as looking queer or whatever, are you even?
Yeah.
You know? And so then there's also like the masquerade not to feel like I have to do that either. I am a non-binary person, but it is also like the softness to be like, I'm not performing, it is not performative, it is actually like a vulnerability, like a cuteness, a care that like I'm putting out there and with myself. Because a lot of the project is really cute.
It is.
And I'm really enjoying like engaging that way because I think in my personality there's like a real roughness and there's also like, oh, I love toys and I love trolls and things like that. So
yeah, and I think that there's something you're talking a lot about your own internal experience through this process, and I think I'm really excited to see them on display at Recess, so like mark your calendars, because it seems, at least my experience so far, is that there's a real invitation on your part for us to be collectively soft.
yeah.
And that's like really powerful, that's a really powerful gesture.
Yeah, exactly, thank you. So like the ceramics are also objects in which people are supposed to send in letters to like basically eulogies or memories of people they've lost or moments that they've lost through COVID. And so like the pottery is supposed to sort of like hold them or be tucked in with them. And so there's something for myself, and I'm so self-obsessed, but it is also like a community thing that like people are supposed to engage with.
That was definitely a read. I was trying to highlight it.
Wow.
Well, we only have a few minutes left and we have one question left, so let's tackle it.
Let's do it.
Marcela, I feel like I may have heard you reference this in the previous talk, but I'm feeling like there's a narrative between life and death drive that connects the disciplines where you're working in. Martial arts, metal music, smoking cigars, and even smoke that visually evokes times of war and conflict. How do you feel like your relationship and outlook on how violence or death exists in the body has changed as you continued your practice, and or how do you hold on to that to maintain a balance?
Yeah.
Great question.
Just great question.
Really?
Great end to everything great. Because I think that like in the previous, the violence is sort of like a static presenceness where you're like, it's about right now and I can never be defeated. I'm going to work so hard so I'll never be defeated. But in like disclosing more of that vulnerability, there's like failure. And there's also, failure in life, like death. And so I think that like the violence part was sort of like not allowing for the end product of recognition of death. And I think in this way, there's, and I think it circles around it. It circles around it and like, is very masculine, being like, no, I'm so strong. But like in this, it's sort of, yeah, I think this idea of life and death being combined is not something that's scary or a failure, or allows for the vulnerability of recognizing how death is like such an important part of life. And that it can be something that is not capitalistic, you know, because like we don't want failure. We always want to get better. We are always like masking ourselves from like the plausibility of an end. But sometimes there's static and sometimes there's end, and we have to be able to recognize that. And I think within indigeneity, that's been a huge thing, to recognize that people before us had an order to these things, had like an answer, had like an idea of how these things work. And they were like a beautiful part of how we engage in everyday life. Like the objects, the smell, all the things that allow us to be present every single day, and reminder that someday we won't be alive, and that's okay too. Is that wild?
That is wow. This deep, profound, poetic, all of the things in a great way to kind of wrap up this conversation, I think. So thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you seriously, everybody. These questions were incredible, and I was kind of nervous seeing all you guys were here. I really super appreciated all your comments and your energy.
Please take a second to follow both Marcela and the Bemis Center on social media so that you can be in touch about your performance this coming Friday. Some of our upcoming studio visits would be set out tomorrow. Just stay in touch, stay tuned.
Yeah, and please come on Friday. I'll be nervous about it. It'll be really intense, but please join us on Friday.
Yes, love it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.